Welcome back to Before the Day Ends. We are glad you're here today and have chosen to join us. If you're new, welcome, glad you're here. At the bottom of this page, you will see a subscribe button. If you click that, you can subscribe to this video series and just be notified when new episodes are available to you about every 3 or 4 days or so. So just, again, click that subscribe button and then you can just follow us there. Also, on our website, beforethedayends.org, there is a contact page. And that contact page is designed to give you a chance to ask questions, leave feedback, just talk back to us about what's going on in your life even. And just go to that page, go to contact us, and you can leave information there for us as well. All right, so we're in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1. We've covered the genealogy. And we kind of said that there are some structures that Matthew sets up literarily to teach us, not just in what he says, but how he says it. So if you go back to that video, you'll see there was 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the Babylonian captivity, and then 14 from the Babylonian captivity to Jesus. So there's 6 sets of 7, and Jesus being the 7th 7. Also in that structure was something we talked about several episodes back, and that was that God uses covenant with his people, and we see 3 major ones highlighted in Matthew's gospel. 2 of them we saw in the genealogy. The covenant with Abraham for land and nation, the covenant with David for a kingdom on the throne from his lineage, and a 3rd one was kind of missing that we're going to see appear again and again in the Gospel of Matthew, and that is Moses, the Mosaic covenant, the Torah, the instruction of God. And we're going to see that especially in this first 4 chapters of birth and beginnings. And so again, we're in these first 4 chapters, which is part of book 1 of Matthew. We reviewed that as well, where we have 5 books like the Torah highlighted in Matthew, divided up into literary sections, each section having a narrative and a discourse section. We are in that first book in the narrative section of the first book. So that's kind of where we're at as we move forward. Now, like I said, we've covered the genealogy. We're going to pick it up in chapter 1, verse 18. And in this section, we have the story of the birth of Jesus, his literal beginnings. And this is a section that highlights a person that was often overlooked at Christmas time. It's Joseph. If you read just Matthew's depiction of the Christmas story, it really highlights Joseph over everyone else. And yet at Christmas time, we have this Joseph figurine that goes in the nativity set, and we don't know where to put him. We put him with the wise men, with the shepherds. He doesn't quite fit, but yet in Matthew's gospel, he is highlighted. He's not a minor character at all. He has a lot to say about Joseph. So when we open this story, you can read it again, beginning in verse 18. Joseph finds out that Mary, his fiancée, is pregnant. And he knows the baby isn't his. And so what's his expectation? What does he think happened? He thinks that probably Mary cheated on him, that she was unfaithful. So what was he feeling? Was he angry, heartbroken, disbelief? Well, it seems that whatever he is feeling, we don't have a hint of that, only what he does. He must believe something happened because he decides to break off their engagement. Now remember, in this period, engagements weren't something that were easily broken. It was almost like a marriage. And so he almost has to divorce Mary in a sense because this is a covenant that has been broken. Not only that, not only was this a formal process and this was a big deal, but Mary was unfaithful. And by Jewish law, she could be put to death for that. So again, this is not just some small thing. This is a big deal for Joseph. But he doesn't want to just turn over to the authorities. He could, right? The law is on his side. This is not his fault, but that's not who Joseph is. In fact, if we were in this situation, what would you be thinking? What would be going through your mind? Joseph acts with grace and compassion. He looks at his relationship with Mary, and he decides that he's going to divorce her. He's going to separate and break off the engagement. But he does it in a way that is going to protect Mary. In verse 19, it says this: her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. So on the one hand, the right thing to do is to end this apparently unfaithful relationship with Mary. She has broken covenant, but it also says Joseph is a righteous man. So he follows God's law. He's going to do the right thing, but he's going to do it righteously. And that's a very, very important distinction I want to make. He cares about Mary. He cares about showing compassion and mercy, which are also part of God's law and God's instruction. So he's going to follow God's commandments and God's commandments for love and compassion. See, it's not just about being right. It's about being righteous, right? It's not just about following the rules. It's also about having mercy. And so Joseph is one who's going to show what righteousness looks like. And I think sometimes we, as people, we can worry so much about being right. We want to do the right thing or to be right, have the right argument, the right perspective, that often we can lose our righteousness. We want to follow the rules so desperately and so completely, perhaps, that we forget to act righteously, or we're judgmental because we want to be right. And we forget that God calls us to be righteous, which is incredibly important. About how we go about being right is defined in how we are being righteous. Now, when Joseph before he does what he's going to do, he has a dream. And in this dream, an angel comes to him and says, Joseph, don't divorce Mary. I want you to name this child Jesus. The child you're going to have is special. He's going to save his people from their sins. And then he says, don't be afraid. In the same section, he actually opens with it. Don't be afraid. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. Joseph wakes up from his dream, and Matthew simply says that he went off and did what the angel told him to do. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd like more information there. Like, what did he think? I mean, how many times have you had a dream and you're thinking, is that a dream? Like, what in the world did I eat last night, right? I mean, is he wondering if this dream's real? Is his mind protecting him? Is he trying to get a way out? Is his mind tricking him? What's going on? Is this real? Would you believe the angel? And so Joseph, we don't have any of that information. Instead, it just says Joseph got up and does what the angel said to do. We don't have any questions or any comments, but that's who Joseph is. We'll see later that an angel comes back and says, hey, you need to escape and go to Egypt. Joseph does. Later on, he says, Joseph, get up from Egypt, go back to the land. And he does. In fact, Joseph says nothing in the Gospel of Matthew. Zero, zip. I mean, he says nothing. And I don't know about you, but I want something. I want to know what he's thinking. How is he going about being righteous in his decisions? This could not have been an easy road for Joseph going forward. I mean, yes, an angel's telling him what to do, and yes, he is obeying it. He's going to be the father of Jesus, the earthly father of Jesus. But this could not have been easy for him, not in the least bit. I mean, what are folks going to say in town when Mary shows up pregnant and they're not married yet? I mean, does he explain to them, no, it's okay, this is God's child? Are they going to believe them? Would you believe him? Or if he says to you, hey, no, God did this. This is God's plan. Would you believe him? In fact, you have to wonder if he ever outlived that stigma. I mean, when he went down the street, did people stare at him? When he was talking to friends, did they kind of wonder what was really going on? In fact, in John 6:42, it says this. They were saying, is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? You know that family. Remember them? They weren't married and had that baby in Bethlehem. You remember those folks? Maybe they were being labeled by the crowds, by public opinion. And maybe they never outlived it. Maybe that's part of your history too. You've been labeled, or folks have made assumptions, and it's hard to outlive those things. I mean, they hang around us. Well, you're not alone. It was true of Joseph too. Remember back to what the angel first said to him. Don't be afraid, Joseph, to take Mary as your wife. Don't be afraid. The angel knew something. Don't be afraid of the crowds. Don't be afraid of public opinion polls. Don't be afraid of those who don't understand or refuse to believe you. Don't be afraid, because this is from God, and God will vindicate you one day. It didn't matter to Joseph what the public thought. It mattered to Joseph what God thought. Because in the end, God wins, and God vindicates those who trust him. Now, sometimes I wonder, maybe I just wish, that Joseph could have seen Jesus risen from the dead, that he could see Jesus vindicated. We don't know if he ever did. In fact, it's mostly agreed to that he wasn't there for the resurrection. And so Joseph died not having seen Jesus overcome the grave. But I wish he did. I wish he could look back at his friends at work and say, you know what? I told you. Did you see that? I told you I was right. Did you see what happened? I mean, I think we all want to be vindicated. But that wasn't part of Joseph's story. Instead, it was one of struggle, of trust, of listening to God over listening to everyone else. And that's a lesson that sometimes we need to learn too. The struggle with faith and righteousness is never easy. And maybe we should take a page out of the story of Joseph and learn not to be afraid to trust in what God is teaching us and telling us and how God wants us to live as disciples, to deal with those struggles daily, to accept them, and to move forward, knowing that in the end, we will be vindicated because we trust God. Maybe that's enough. So maybe the point is not knowing what Joseph said or what Joseph thought, but focusing on what Joseph did. And more than that, who he listened to. It wasn't the crowds. It wasn't a public opinion. He listened to his Father. He listened to his Father in heaven so he could be a father to his son on earth. He listened to the Father so that one day the son that he adopts in Bethlehem could one day adopt him into his kingdom. And with Joseph, us as well.